Okay, let's go. Right. So before we start, let me say, I know there are distractions everywhere, but the information I'm going to share is can really help you to learn all the latest features of C# 8. So please close your Facebook, your email, and try to focus if you can. If you can't do it for me, just do it for yourself, so you can really get the most out of the content. I have a lot of slides, all covering the C# 8 language features coming soon. So I really want you to get the most out of it. Perfect. Thank you for confirming that you can see the slides. Brilliant. Right, very quickly about me. The only things you need to know is that I love C#. I've been using C# since the first version came out, and been a professional developer for more than 10 years now using C#. I've been nominated as a Microsoft MVP. I'm also running the .NET Cambridge community here in UK. And I'm working in Reggae software, working with C# and building database DevOps solutions for our customers. So the mission I have is to help you become a master C# 8 developer. That's why I created Productive C#, and that's why you are in this webinar. I basically build a collection of resources to really help developers to learn the language and become more productive. As a token of appreciation for you to be here in the webinar, I just want to give you a very quick offer for new people that are not members already, that they can join for a full year or the My Productive C# membership at the price of a month. So you can just join for $17. Usually it costs $97, but for the first year you can join at $17. So if you go to the URL productivec.com/offer, you can see all the details about the membership, and you can join anytime. And this offer is only available for the next 24 hours. So it's only for people attending the webinar. So please do. I really want to help every one of you to be more productive. I will talk more about the membership at the end of the webinar. So let's jump into the code and C#. So where are we now with C# and .NET? So you probably know that Stack Overflow recently announced the results of the developer survey for 2019, and C# is still very strong amongst the top 10 programming languages as for professional developers. And more interestingly, .NET and .NET Core are in the top 3 most popular technologies, and .NET Core specifically is the most loved framework available at the moment. So that was really great to see, and you all probably know why the popularity of .NET Core has increased so much, mostly because Microsoft really invested a lot on it, shared all the code is open source, so all the community contributed to it, and there is a lot of good stuff coming up. Quite recently at the Microsoft Build conference, Microsoft announced the future of .NET, and there will be a release of .NET Core in September this year, and that will be the release when C# 8 will be available, so in a few months. After that release, the new release will be called .NET 5. So .NET Core will not exist anymore after next year, but it's just kind of marketing. In reality, .NET 5 is effectively like the .NET Core. What Microsoft decided to do is that because now there are so many implementation of .NET, there is Mono, there is Core CLR, there is the actual .NET framework on Windows. They really diversified a lot, and they had different code bases to maintain and stuff like that. So Microsoft really want to converge into a single .NET, and they decided to call it .NET 5. That will be released in November 2020, according to what Microsoft said. So the idea is to have a single .NET runtime and framework that can be used everywhere for kind of any sort of experiences. We'll basically expand the capability of .NET, taking the best of .NET Core, .NET Framework, Xamarin, and Mono all together. So we will see what is coming, but it's really quite exciting. And I think they said they plan to release a new version of .NET every year, and C# will be released like yearly since from 2020. So exciting timing ahead. And for Microsoft, obviously this is going to be a single code base, so there will be only one single code base for .NET, and there will be open source, of course. What about C#? So what the strategy that Microsoft has for the language? So the C# is clearly the official language for Microsoft. They want to keep growing the language to meet the needs of developers. They want to make it a state-of-the-art programming language, and that's why they are really investing aggressively on the language, adding new features every year. So they are really innovating very aggressively. And that's one of the design decisions they decided to make. So this means they accept that the language will become more complicated over time. They will try to maintain the simplicity of the language, the productivity of the language, but there will be more features to like satisfy the needs of the future. So, but they will also try not to add features that are only used by a very subset of the developers. They really want to benefit most of developers when they add new features. You might think some of the features that have been introduced lately are not really that useful for the majority of developers, but also think about the libraries that you are using. So if there is a feature that can really help .NET to run a lot quicker, like the .NET Core is taking advantage of a lot of the new C# 7 features, everyone will benefit from the performance benefits. So if a small feature from C# that you're probably not going to use it can really help to speed up the code, the time of your code run, so that definitely benefit everyone. And that's one of the big advantages of .NET Core. They really improve performance a lot. So that's kind of the strategy for C#. So C# is going to be around for a long time, and that's definitely the future of .NET. Okay, so let's start with the C# 8. So this is definitely the repository where everything is available. If you go to GitHub, you search for .NET/C#lang. Everything about C# is publicly available. All the design meetings are published in GitHub. So all the discussion that the team is having in Microsoft are available, and I read them all. So you can do that as well. So you can really see what Microsoft is thinking right now. And is really great that all the language is available, and you can contribute to it if you want. Okay, how you can get started with C# 8? As I said, C# 8 is still under active development from Microsoft. It's not yet finished, but you can already play with a preview of C# 8 using Visual Studio. So you need to install Visual Studio 2019. And also you need to install .NET Core preview. This because some of the features that has been added in C# 8 are only available on .NET Core 3 and the latest version. That's a decision that Microsoft decided to make, because some of the C# features require such changes in the runtime, and then Microsoft didn't want to invest changing the .NET framework, to support them. And they might do, I don't know, but according to what I know at the moment, that's not on their plans. So .NET Core 3 will be required to run C# 8. So at the moment, when you install Visual Studio, if you want to enable C# for a project, you need to right-click on the project, go to Build, click Advanced, and then specify the unsupported preview of the next C# version in the language version setting. So by default, in Visual Studio 2019, you will always use the latest released minor version of the language. That for now is C# 7.3. So if you want to use C# 8, you need to either select C# 8 directly or specify preview. Also, you need to enable the use of previews for the .NET Core SDK inside the options in Visual Studio. Otherwise, you won't be able to target .NET Core 3 in your projects. If you install the preview branch of Visual Studio, I think this option is already enabled for you. But if you're using like the official release of Visual Studio 2019, you need to explicitly enable it in order to play with C# 8. So when you do that, you will be able to see inside the target framework .NET Core 3. So you will be able to target the framework in your application and then be able to use the C# 8 features. And what actually happens under the covers is that the target framework and the lang version tags are added in your C# projects. And that basically enable .NET Core 3 and C# 8. Okay, so let's jump into the first and probably the most important features coming in C#8. That's the nullable reference types. So this feature is interesting because it's disabled by default when you start using C#8. So you enable C#8, but this feature is not available immediately. So you need to enable the feature by adding the nullable context options and set it to enable inside your C# project. When you do that, a lot of stuff happens. So you are effectively changing how the compiler works. So let's get into that. So on the left in this infographic, you can see how C# works as you know it. So when you create a reference type, like for example a string name, you create a variable that is a reference type, you can assign null to it. So by default, reference types are nullable in C#, and there is no way to create non-nullable reference types. You can create nullable value types, using the question mark, but you can't do that for reference types. When you enable the nullable reference types in C#, all the time you create a reference type variable will be non-nullable. So that means that if you try to assign null to a variable that is a reference type, you will get a compiler warning. That's because Microsoft didn't want to break backward compatibility with your project. So instead of showing an error, it will show a warning. Obviously, if you can configure your project to like treat warnings as errors, like I do, for example, at work, in that case, you might get a tons of warnings or errors coming from the compiler when you enable this feature. Because the semantics of reference types effectively change from the compiler point of view. In addition to that, the compiler now provides a syntax for you to declare variables that are nullable. So if you use a string question mark, for example, if you use the question mark the same way that you use the nullable value types, you can define a nullable reference type. And when you assign null to a variable that is nullable, you can do that without getting any warning. So this means that by default, all reference types are non-nullable, and you need to explicitly tell the compiler when you know that a variable can be null. That's kind of the summary of it. So that's an example of some code when I enable C#8, and you can see that the compiler will give you warnings telling you that you can't assign null to a variable. Is also doing a lot in terms of flow analysis. For example, if you say that a variable is nullable, the compiler start to do a flow analysis and start to give you warnings all the time. The text that you can assign, you can dereference a null reference. So that's really valuable. So you can expect to find bugs using this feature in your projects, and that's really valuable. If you try to go on your project at work, for example, and try to enable C#, that's something definitely I recommend you to do. So if you have Visual Studio ready now, you can open it and try to enable C#8 for your project and see how many warnings you get. If you do that, please let me know and share that in the chat. I'm very curious to see how many warnings you get. I think for the project at work, I've got more than 2,000 warnings when I did it. So I can describe a process that you can use in order to convert your project to use this new way of working. However, there are some situations when the compiler is not smart enough to understand when a null reference can happen. So in those cases, you can use the Null-Forgiving Operator using the question mark dot in order to say the compiler, please, I know that this variable can never be null. So first name and last name, I know they are nullable reference types, but please, in this case, I know that they can be null. So please don't give me any warnings. So you are really telling the compiler to shut up effectively. So that's also why you should use this operator really with caution. So you should use it only if you don't find any other way of arranging your code to avoid the warning. But there are situations when you need to do that, and that's why Microsoft added this operator in the language. So let me recap what are the new compiler rules when you enable nullable reference types. So when you do that, any variable of a reference type becomes non-nullable by default. So any non-nullable reference can be dereferenced safely. So the compiler will not give you any warning if you try to, reference a non-nullable reference, dereference a non-nullable reference, because you are effectively telling the compiler that it's safe to do that. If you want to say that a nullable reference type is nullable, use the question mark, and then you get all the static analysis for you. And you can use the null-forgiving operator to declare that a nullable reference is not null. Okay? Okay, but I told you how you can enable C#, this feature of C# for a project. If you have a solution with lots of projects, you can, for example, enable the feature project by project and basically work gradually project by project. But sometimes some projects are very big and you want to do you have a bit more granular control. So Microsoft created these nullable directives that allows you to disable nullable checking for a particular file or for a particular region of code. So you can wrap some code in nullable, disable, nullable, enable, and then effectively, you can disable the compiler checks for that particular code. This nullable directives and the fact that the feature is disabled by default allows you to gradually start to use the features for legacy projects. If you start a new project with C#8, I would probably recommend you to start directly with the feature enable, because it can really help you to write more high code with high quality and avoid, the null reference exception that we all hate. So that's kind of the reason why Microsoft decided to introduce this feature, is effectively to reduce the number of occurrences of null reference exceptions. However, there is something very important I need to mention, because it might feel a bit worrying that Microsoft is changing the language so drastically with this feature. But remember that at runtime, nothing has changed. So the runtime know nothing about nullable reference types. So no nullable reference types. So all reference types are nullable in .NET for the runtime point of view. So there is no change in terms of how the code runs at runtime. The only changes are at compile time. The compiler gives you a lot more warnings, a lot more support, writing better code. What happens under the covers is that when you have this feature enabled, some nullable attributes are added all over your code, so that the compiler can see what kind of reference type is dealing with. So if you say like nullable 1 for string first name, is saying that is effectively a non-nullable reference type. If it's using nullable 2, it's saying that is a nullable reference type, and so on. And it does clever stuff if you have like complex types, like a dictionary that takes a string and a hint, stuff like that. So you need to tell if the dictionary, the string, and the int are nullable or not for each particular type. So that's something you don't need to worry about, but just know that when you compile your code targeting C#8 with this feature enabled, all these attributes are added to your code. This means that the compiler is able to provide support when you are using a library that enabled this feature. So if you're consuming a library that's already been using this new feature, you will get additional support from the compiler when you're using this library. And John's Kit already kind of added support for C# nullable reference types in Time. That is his own pet project on GitHub. It's a very famous project for dealing with datetimes. So if you want to have a look at his PR, you can see how he approached the conversion. I think he did everything in one PR, but he kept this PR open for quite a while, doing all the commits and changes to make sure that the code works as expected. But that's a good example for you to have a look. Okay, so next feature, using declarations. So you probably are familiar with the using statement. If you are an object that implements disposable, you can use the using statement in order to automatically have the framework to call dispose for you at the end of the using statement block. So that's quite common to use this feature. Instead of doing a try finally and then doing in the finally a dispose, the C# compiler does that for you using the using statement. The only annoying things about this using statement that is not uncommon to nest more using statement one inside another. So that means that your code becomes more nested and sometimes a bit less readable. So what Microsoft did is effectively making the using statement, adding a using declaration. You can do the same behavior but using a single line without creating a block. So basically converted the using statement from a statement into a declaration. You can use both, but from now on, to be honest, I would consider using the declaration all the time because it makes the code a lot more compact and you avoid two other nested blocks. So what happened is that file stream, for example, in this code, automatically will be disposed at the end of the method. So the dispose will be called at the end of the scope where the variable is being created using the using declaration. Okay. So this code that you can see is effectively equivalent to the previous one. Small feature, but can be really useful to slightly simplify your code. Okay. In addition to that, Microsoft also created the Async Disposable interface. So you know that Disposable is synchronous, so the dispose is effectively called synchronously. But what if you want to dispose an object in an asynchronous way? Well, now you can do it using implementing the Async Disposable interface that is basically have a single method dispose async that return a value task, and you can actually implement the async the dispose in an asynchronous way. But in order to actually dispose it, Microsoft updated the using statement and the using declaration to use the await keyword before. Oh yeah, thanks Steve for sharing the blog post from John Skit. He keep finding like edge cases in the compiler. I know Microsoft is still actively working on reference types, so they really want to make sure that the number of false positive from the compiler are as less as possible. So yeah, it's definitely something they're actively working on. So I'm sure John Skit will find interesting edge cases, and we will find interesting edge cases when we start enabling null reference types in our projects. Thanks for sharing, Steve. Yeah, so as I said, the using statement and the using declaration now support await. And when you do await using, automatically the C# compiler will generate code that calls the async dispose method at the end of the method. This is also a prerequisite in order to enable something that a lot of people were looking for a while, that are asynchronous streams. So IEnumerable is a fantastic interface that enabled what we all like in C#, that is LINQ, the language integrated query. So the ability to use kind of a sort of functional way to query objects in memories. But the problem with IEnumerable is that all of the operations are synchronous. Okay, if you want to do use LINQ in an asynchronous way, there is no way to do that in the framework unless you use a kind of a third-party libraries. So Microsoft added this, is planning to add this feature in C# 8. Is already available for you to play with Visual Studio. So it's introduced this IAsync enumerable interface that has a get async enumerator, and then the enumerator simply have a property current and the move nest async. So it's effectively matching the same interface as IEnumerable, but using async. And the cool thing about that is that you can easily now create a method or some code that allows you to asynchronously consume. So you can asynchronously produce content, and you can asynchronously consume content using await for each. So let me explain how this code works. So the first method at the top, get content, takes a list of URLs as strings, and then using yield return await in order to get the do an HTTP request to that URL and get the content back. And the content is returned as an async IEnumerable. So this code looks extremely familiar, but what the compiler generates under the covers is crazy. So don't even try to look at it. I tried, and it's really difficult to understand. Is it's really creating complicated code, but under the covers, this complexity is completely hidden for you. And you can simply use an await for each to just iterate through the content in a complete asynchronous way. So it's really an amazing features that I'm sure will be used a lot in the future for application where there is a need to do asynchronous consumes content in an asynchronous way. And also Microsoft is adding support for cancellation. I think it's not yet available in the language. I might be wrong, but there will be a way to pass during when you do a for each a cancellation token. So, and then in your method you will be able to cancel the operation while it's in progress. So definitely a very powerful feature that Microsoft is adding. And so I hope that then async link will be available as well. Probably would be like a third-party libraries to do that. Okay, then new features are indexes. Okay, so when you want to access an element of a collection, but you want to access that from the end of the collection, at the moment there is not an easy way to do that in C#. You need to, for example, do text calculate the index yourself using the length of your array. For example, in this case, text.length -1 is the last element of text, and then you can get it. So there's not an easy way to do that. With indexes, Microsoft help to fix this problem. And you can use just the at operator, hat1 and hat2 to get the last one and the previous one of a string or an array. So it's a very small syntactic sugar, but can really help you to make your code easier to understand. Under the covers, the C# compiler transform the index expression into the instantiation of an index struct, and is passing the number that you provided and true if it means that you are basically starting from the end of the collection. You can see that this is effectively a struct that provides a value and if it's from end or not, and all like the various methods that makes a value object. And these structs here are defined inside .NET Core 3. That's why, for example, using this feature requires .NET Core 3. The same for like the asynchronous streams, like the iAsync enumerable, iAsync disposable. All are those are types that are required for C# 8 features to work, and they are defined in .NET Core 3. That's why you need the runtime support for using these features. If you want, you can, of course, provide an indexer that takes an index, so you can add index support for your types. For example, unfortunately, list doesn't yet support indexes and ranges. I really hope Microsoft is going to do that, but at the moment it's not possible. So this is a very simple example where I kind of inherited from list and I had the support. I definitely don't recommend you to do that. I've done that just for for teaching reasons. So to show you how you can use an index and add support for a type to use indexes basically on a type. Ranges, in fact, instead is a way to extract a subset of a collection. For example, if you want to extract all the elements from a string except the first one and the last one, you can use a substring one and then calculate the length you wanna extract, or you can use a range and you do text 1.9. So 1.9 is a range expression that means effectively starting from the index 1 till the index 9 excluded, and return the element. So it's a very compact way of extracting a substring from a string or a subarray from an array. And here there are some example of usages. So 1.9 is what we've seen, but you can use 1.hat1, so to use the index syntax from the end. You can also do open ranges, like to say 1 dot means take everything from position 1 till the end of the string. You can do at 6 dot to say takes the last 6 characters from the string, or you can say hat 2 to say takes everything except the last 2 characters, or you can even do takes everything. That's quite useless, but it's also supported. So with the ranges, you can really do very simple slicing on collections. And this is effectively a feature that Microsoft borrowed from Python, and a feature I always loved from Python. So I'm glad is now part of the language. Under the covers, the C# compiler converts a range expression into the instantiation of a range struct that, as you can expect, the range takes two indexes, the start index and the end index, and then you also have some methods that allows you to create open-ended ranges as well. So there's nothing like a magic here. It's simply the compiler, syntactic sugar, allows you to, in a very nice and easy way, slice collections for you. Okay. And this is the class, the struct actually, that allows to implement this feature for the language. If you have any questions, please ask. So how many of you are familiar with ReSharper? So ReSharper is a tool that is honestly, for me, is something I really can't live without. Is a productivity tool that kind of gives you a lot more productivity when you work with C# in .NET. Sorry, I'm just looking at the question. Stefan asking how we can take care of the difference of indexing. Normally, the index is start from 0. So yeah, the index start from 0. Let me go back to that. The index, the start index start from 0, but the end index is a bit unintuitive. So if you do @1, basically means the last element, but the complexity is the fact that the upper end of the range is exclusive instead of inclusive. It's a decision that Microsoft decided to do. This basically means that if you do @1 is means the last element, basically. That, yeah, you just need to get familiar with it. Okay, thank you, Steve, for sharing about ReSharper. So ReSharper is, is definitely an extension that gives you a lot more productivity. It allows you to create C# very quickly and help you to learn C# as well. And the latest ReSharper support C#8. You can already play with a lot of the C#8 features. There are also a lot of other tools available as part of the C# Ultimate that allows you to do like code coverage and analysis performance and see what a compiler generates when you compile your C# code. I use that quite a lot, like .NET Peak, to see the compilation of .NET. Very useful for learning C#. And you also have profilers as well. So it's really a very good tool set. It's usually about $299, but I can tell you, you can get it for free if you join the Production C# membership today. You just spend $17. You get a full year access to the membership, and you get also ReSharper Ultimate for free. Or if you already have ReSharper Ultimate, you can get any JetBrains product. So, and you have 7 days money back guarantee if you really want to get it back. So definitely recommend ReSharper. I'm using it all the time, and is really a valuable resource to use. So let's move on and see all the other C#8 features that are coming. Switch expressions. All right, this is my favorite feature. On the left, you can see like the normal switch statement that we are all used to. That takes a nullable bool, and then based on the status, true, false, or null, will set a variable message and print it. You can see on the right how you can use switch expressions to simplify the code and write the entire switch expression as an expression, effectively. The entire switch statement is an expression. It's a lot more compact. You don't need to do case, you don't need to do breaks and stuff like that, because that syntax comes from C. Finally, Microsoft improved this switch statement to make it a lot more compact. There is obviously a very important difference. The switch statement doesn't need to return a value. It's effectively a statement, but a switch expression does need to return a value. So you can't convert all the switch statement to use switch expressions. You won't be able to do for all of them, but most of the time, you have a method with a switch statement that returns a value based on the switch, you can really replace everything with switch expressions. ReSharper also help you to do that as well. It automatically allows you to convert switch expression to the new syntax very easily for you. And you use the kind of normal lambda syntax in order to specify each case expression inside your switch. And also you can use underscore instead of default to say everything else, like the default case of the switch. Really nice, clean and compact syntax coming to C# 8 for dealing with switches. Okay, the other cool stuff is the patterns. Patterns matching is something that's been added in C# 7 that allows you to do a bit more functional, add a bit more functional features into the language. With C# 8, Microsoft added a new type of patterns. One of them is property patterns. So if you have a code like that takes a person and a decimal price and calculates some sort of final price or kind of discounted price, you can obviously use like person.isSubscribed, person.address.state, stuff like that if you want to do it, but you can use a pattern if you prefer inside the if statement. And let's see how you can use patterns, for example, to convert this code. You can say person is, and then in curly brackets, is subscribed, false, for example. I know that doesn't look better. In my opinion, I wouldn't do that in this particular case, but I want to give you the idea of what you can do with property patterns. So you say any person that has a property is subscribed set to false will match this condition. Or you can do a lot more complicated stuff. You can say any object that has an address property that contains a state and that the state is Italy will match. This doesn't matter what type person is. This person could be any type. That's where the power is. Person could be any type as far as there is an address and a state. So you can do person.address.state. You will be able to get this compile. And as you can see, this is kind of recursive. You can do recursive pattern property pattern matching, and the compiler does it for you. And all of the property patterns are available inside the switch expressions as well. So it's just a matter of testing what you prefer or not. I can clearly see situations when the new code using property patterns is less readable than the original one, so I would use them with caution. But there are situations when it can be really helpful and make your code a lot more compact. If you can use null as a pattern matching in there, and underscore to basically say everything else. And of course you can do when to like specify a particular condition after a pattern is being matched. The other sort of patterns that is introduced in C# 8 are the tuple patterns. So let's say you have a method cost that takes coin and a point, and you want to do some logic based on that. So calculate, return a cost based on that. You can use tuple patterns to make this code a lot more readable. So let's see how it looks. You can say if the move is head and then capture the variable x, and I don't care about y. If x is greater than 0, return x. That means say that if I do a head, if my move is a head and x is greater than 0, return x. If the move is a head and just return y. Otherwise, if it's tail and y is greater than 0, return y. So you can really read that as you might do like a mathematical expression. And it's very important to say that the order of evaluation is top down. So if the first rule match, the switch expression is basically completed. So will be only the cases will be evaluated in order, basically. That's why the second one, for example, capture the situation when x is lower than or equals than 0, for example. If it's head and x is lower than or equals than 0, it will be captured by the second statement. So yeah, you can clearly see that with the tuple patterns, you can really make your code a bit more compact. And as you can see here in this code, in this example, I'm also using the capture variable pattern that was introduced in C# 7 to actually get access to a particular element of a tuple. and use that to do conditions on top of that. If you see the code on the left, you also see that you don't need to do like move.coin, move.point.x, move.point.y too many times. You can simply, use x, y, add, and tail directly. And as you probably noticed, I don't even need to give a name to the move in the tuple, because I create the names as part of the switch expression. So you can reduce a lot of noise when you use this feature. Finally, there are positional patterns. So you are probably familiar about the deconstructor that has been added in C#7. When you have an object, you can create a deconstructor to basically deconstruct an object into a tuple. So in this case, you have a point class that has an x and a y. You can deconstruct it into a tuple of x and y if you want. So this method allows you to do that. What Microsoft added is that if a class implements a deconstructor, you can effectively use the positional pattern in order to do that. Let's see an example. So this is an example where we are using the property patterns to, given a point, return the quadrant where the point belongs. So if the point is 0, 0, return origin. Otherwise, if x is greater than 0 and y is greater than 0, return 1, and so on. I can rewrite this code using positional patterns like that. So see how many times I was using x and y in the previous code, and how much more compact is the code now. So you say match 0, 0, return origin. So you don't need to repeat x and y, because point implement are deconstructors. So you can directly use a tuple in the initial part of the case statement. And then you can use var xy, for example, in order to match any kind of point, because point implement the constructor. So you simplify a lot of the noise using the positional patterns. Okay, so let's see other small other features that's been added in C#8. One of them is static local functions. So up until now, C# provides local function support. C#7 added that support, but you couldn't have static local functions. So all local functions were effectively capturing the variables. So from the function that contains that local function, that sometimes can have performance implications. So Microsoft simply allows now you to use a static keyword for a local function, so that you know that local function will be static. There will be no capturing of variables whatsoever. So there will be slightly more performance. You still get the benefit of making sure that the local function can only be called from the function where it's defined. All right. Then, this one is really something I really was looking forward. The verbatim interpolated strings. You know that C# allows you to have interpolated strings where you can specify like the curly brackets and put a variable name, and then automatically the C# replace the variable names with the actual values. But sometimes you want to use also verbatim strings, that where you can use like slashes without having to do like the escaping every time. Up until now, you had to really use the right order of $ and @ in order to be able to use this feature. So now you can do this in any order, and it doesn't really matter. Right? The compiler still compile regardless of the order of $ and @ So that's very good, because all the time I forgot what's the right order of to use verbatim interpolated strings. And if you manipulate project path, you probably do it quite often. This is another interesting one. I'm not quite sure if it's gonna make to C#8, because all of these features are, C#8 is still under active development, so I can't promise that all of these features will be actually added to C#8. Microsoft can decide anytime to pull some features. But this one is an interesting one. You all know that Microsoft added the var keyword in C#3. That's really helped when you create a local variable to avoid specifying the type when you declare a variable. You can just do var variable equals new, and then specify the type only once instead of specifying it twice. However, if you have a field in a class, for example, you can't avoid that. You need to specify the type twice. And if you have a complex type, like a dictionary, for example, in this case, you have a dictionary of a string of a list of int, you need to repeat that twice in order to create this dictionary. So that's a bit annoying, to be honest. So Microsoft decided to introduce this new target type new expression that when you have a field, you can just use new open bracket and close bracket without specifying the type in order to specify to create a new object. Because the compiler from the field knows already what the type is, you don't need to specify that again. So you can do that for the actual private property and also for the kind of nested types as well. As you can see in the list of int, you don't need to specify new list of int every time. You can just do new in there. So again, another attempt from Microsoft to try to make your code more compact and avoid you to write unnecessary code when the compiler can automatically understand your types. Small and nice feature. This is another one that you can find yourself often like checking if a variable is null and then assigning a value to a variable, but you don't want to assign a value if the variable is now being set. So it's kind of, if you want to assign a default value to a variable only once when it's null. There is a very short compact now to do that. That's called null coalescing assignment. So you can do variable question mark equals and then specify your default value. And then you know that that variable will be assigned only if the variable is null. That's very small feature. I'm not sure how valuable it is, but if you find yourself to do a lot of if variable is null and then assignments, you will find this feature useful. If not, probably don't. And also we have a very interesting feature coming up that's called default interface implementations. So this feature here is quite interesting. So C# allows you to create interfaces, and you can have a class that implements multiple interfaces. However, an interface can't have an implementation. I mean, up until now, there was no way for an interface to actually provide any sort of implementation. When you inherit from an interface, you have to implement all the methods that the interface provides or properties. This means that if you want to evolve an interface in the future, if you want to add a method to an interface, for example, that you will break compatibility all the time in C# at the moment. So if you make this interface public and your consumers rely on that interface, if you add a method to that interface, you are forcing all the consumer of that interface to add an implementation of that method. And this has been a source of pain for a lot of people working with legacy code and evolving legacy code bases. So Microsoft considered adding the ability to add a new method to an interface and provide a default implementation for that method. This means that you won't break backward compatibility with your code if you want to evolve an interface. Something that I would probably use with caution, but it's a feature that Microsoft added in order to allow you to evolve an interface without breaking clients. Without this feature, sometimes the solution was to create a second interface that inherited from the original one with the additional method, but that caused some problem as well. So it's a bit tricky to deal with that sort of situation. So this feature will help in these sort of scenarios. So you will be able to explicitly override the default implementation in sub interfaces or the actual class itself. So it's kind of giving you the ability to do some sort of multiple inheritance using interface with a shared implementation. So this also introduced some scenarios where there might be some conflicts when you have like an interface and two interfaces implementing that, and then another one implementing both. That caused the sort of diamond problem in multiple inheritance, but it's Microsoft's claiming that is not too much of a big deal, and most of the time you don't find yourself in that position with this feature. But it's obviously a concern you might have if you want to start using this feature. My personal opinion, I haven't used that yet, but is that probably I would like to stay away from that unless I really have the need to extend an interface in the future after I release the interface already. So, but anyway, this is really a pain that a lot of customers, Microsoft customers have. So a lot of other developers have. So Microsoft decided to really help support this scenario. But This is C#8. There's a lot more coming up. There's a lot more features that Microsoft is thinking about adding, if not in C#8, in the future version of the language. It's really crazy if you look at all the proposal available on GitHub on the C# Lang repository. There are features like record types coming to the language that allows you to create a high higher. Record types, for example, is an amazing feature that I'm really looking forward to. It allows you to create classes and automatically implement the equals and the get hash code methods for you in a kind of value object semantic. It's quite painful at the moment in C# to implement equality. Record types really is going to help a lot on that. But it's not yet ready. I'm really waiting for that feature a lot, but it's not going to come in C#8 for sure. But there's a lot of other features. I'm not going to go into all of that, but there's like native number types, shapes and roles is going to be quite interesting, like sort of interfaces, but a lot less loosely coupled. That will allow you to do like operation, like more mathematical operation in operator overriding a lot easier way. Declaration expression, compiler intrinsics. There is really a lot of stuff coming up in the language. I obviously will be sharing with you everything I learn on that. But also, if you look backward, there's still quite a lot of features in C# 7, 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3 that has been added to the language. And I promise that every single person I talk with, they don't really know all the features that's been added in C#. There are so many, especially been added since C# 7. It's very hard to keep up, and you might miss out on some good features, like tuples is an example one. But there are like value tasks as well, ref assignments, ref structs, stuff like that. Some of them are really very specific for like low-level interactions. You might not want to use them, but there are others that are very interesting, and like through expression, for example, can really be useful. So I definitely invite you to learn more about C# as well. So at this point, I want to reiterate about the offer, because I cover all of these features and inside the membership, and you can get the membership for a full year. You can get all the videos immediately and all the new videos that we release in the next year just for $17. So just $1 a month if you think about that. So you can join that. I'm gonna very quickly give you an overview of the membership. You can ask me any question if you are interested, but this offer is only available for the next 24 hours. So then the price will be back to $97. So the main things why people join the membership is for the videos. Of course, you will get access to a lot more in-depth video about C# with practical coding. You will be able to download the code, so you can actually do deliberate practice on the features. You get quizzes at the end of the videos, where you can actually check if your understanding of a particular feature you get a particular feature. So there are a lot of videos. They're not just about C#, also about Azure, unit testing, .NET Standard, Docker, and more will come. And you will have the opportunity to influence me on the kind of content I'm going to create. So I want to build this membership, in a way that is the recommended way of learning C# and .NET. There are free licensing for sponsors. I already mentioned JetBrains ReSharper Ultimate. You get it for free if you join today as part of this offer. And you also get other licenses. I do raffles every month. I give away free ebooks, PostSharp licenses, RefDebug, Aussie Code. It's an amazing debugger tool. And the more sponsors will come in the futures, and I will obviously share special discounts, free licenses to all members. You have a private Slack community that you can join, where you can discuss with other C# developers, share opinions, ask questions, stuff like that. Every week, I send a newsletter with new production C# content and links to various articles about C# and .NET. I literally listen to every single blog and information on the internet about C#. There are thousands of news every day, and I filter them out for you, and I send a very 10 to 20 links every week that are really what you really need to stay up to date with the language and .NET. And I send this weekly newsletter every week. And this is something that most members really enjoy. Thank you, Stefano, for the recommendation. And of course, you get privileged access to me, so you will be able to send me questions anytime. I'm there. I'm here for supporting you, so just drop me an email, and I will be able to help. I have a lot of people also that are new to the language that want recommendation on how to learn the language in the best way, and I'm always happy to help. There are also more experienced developers. They ask me like some tricky scenarios with generics and stuff like that, and I'm also happy to help on that. So definitely recommend you to join. Let me share a few testimonials of people that are enjoying the membership. Alexei joined for the first day since I launched last year. Is saying that I can explain complex topics in a very short and useful videos and keep him informed about the latest .NET news. Tom is a project manager. He loves the practical videos, the regular news, and the ability to download the code and understand the language. So MyPractice is a great place to keep my mind fresh on coding. The Resharper license, Leonard, is for 6 months, and then you have a 25% discount afterward. I also keep in mind that it's not just Resharper, the entire Resharper Ultimate Suite. Or if you already have that, you can use like Rider, that is their IDE, or any other JetBrains license. So you can choose effectively what kind of product you want. My recommendation, obviously, if you don't have Resharper Ultimate, is to go with Resharper Ultimate, because that's the product that contains everything you need as a .NET developer, and I use that all the time. For sure, I will do videos on Resharper in the membership. I don't have yet any, but I use Resharper as part of every video in the membership. Okay, does it answer your question, Leonard? Then Luca shared, among the many C# resources out there, Andrea was able to create the best platform to learn C# in terms of quality and quantity of content, and thanks to his proven knowledge of C# programming language. Since he joined, he quickly expanded and improved his technical skills, and Andrea helps me to stay current with .NET and all the latest C# features. Mario is also a project manager. That is no frills and lots of code. This is what MyPractice is about. Andrea's essential and effective style will easily get you throughout the code. Each step is simple and clear. A special thanks to him. So something I'm really proud of is that all the videos are very practical. I just jump into Visual Studio and show you the code. Obviously, on a webinar, that's a bit more difficult to do, and because I want to cover a lot of content. But each of my videos go down to each specific feature, and in a productive way. You can download the code and play with the features yourself, in addition to watching the video. That's my recommended way of doing it, because without the practice, you won't be able to remember all the things I share. But the videos are very short, 5 to 10 minutes, so you can just go straight to the point, understand what you need in order to become more productive. I just don't care about any marketing fluff that Microsoft or any other third party can share. I just want to share what you need on the job, based on my experience. So other testimonials. Corinne say that what I like about Andrea Productive C# is being able to get the latest features, technologies in C# and .NET on a weekly basis. He gives small videos of these features with code examples and links to the latest articles, reports on these technologies. He condenses it down for you so that you don't have to do the searching on the internet, and he also shows a genuine interest in you learning these technologies. Stefano, that is also on the live chat at the moment, say I watch Productive C# videos after work. Thanks to the simplicity of the videos and the enthusiasm of Andrea, I find the experience enjoyable even after an hard day at work. Moreover, being able to download the code has allowed me to master new techniques and use them in my team. I'm really proud of Stefano, because he used to be a solution developer at XG in Malta, now moved to UK, and really improved his situation, and now joined as a senior .NET developer in UK. So thank you very much, Stefano, for being a valuable member. Nicolas shared, everyone will tell you how smart and knowledgeable Andrea is. His videos and articles have been enormously useful in shaping, testing, and refining my own approach to software development. He's an exceptional teacher, and MyPractice is just a proof of it. Andrea is one of the best software craftsmen I've ever met. So that's pretty much the offer. So the price is usually $17 per month, or $97 per year. But as a token of appreciation for you being part of this webinar, I want to give you a full year access for the first year, only if you are not a member already, for only $17. So the same price as a month, you can get access for a full year, evaluate the Production C# membership, and then if you want to stay the following year, it will be just $97. But that's not just the content that I already produce, but every content that we'll produce in the next year as well, plus all the community and access to me. And you have 7 days money back guarantee. So just go ahead and do it. You have just 24 hours to do that. So said that, thank you very much for attending the webinar. I really hope you get some value out of today's meetings, and I really hope you can become a very productive C# developer. And if you want to share with me what's the most valuable things you've learned today, and please share the webinar link to your colleagues and friends and help them become more productive C# developers.